The camera lights glared off the white walls of Rikers Island's staff briefing room. 3 correctional officers sat side by side, their faces half hidden by shadows. Their uniforms were plain, badges turned inward, and their hands gripped paper cups that trembled slightly. The oldest of them, Officer Ramirez, leaned into the microphone and said, "People think it's the inmates who are dangerous, but they don't know what we've been hiding." The other 2 officers, Daniels and Cooper, exchanged uneasy glances. Ramirez swallowed hard, his voice dropping low. "Last year, something happened in the South Compound. We were ordered to stay quiet. But if I stay quiet any longer, I won't sleep again." He paused, staring at the floor. It wasn't an inmate riot. It wasn't an escape. It was one of us. The room went still. The sound of the overhead fan was the only thing breaking the silence. Ramirez took a shaky breath and said, "We found Officer Miles locked inside a cell, handcuffed from the outside. The inmates couldn't have done it. No one else was on that tier." Daniels turned pale. "You sure you want to tell them that?" Ramirez looked up at the camera. "The truth has to come out. Because that night, Rikers turned on itself." The recording flickered and cut to black. 2 weeks before that night, the island prison seemed like any other day in New York's most notorious jail. Officer Ramirez had worked there for 18 years, long enough to know the smell of bleach couldn't cover the real scent of Rikers, fear and sweat. The morning lineup was loud. Inmates shouted through the bars, calling for food, lawyers, or fights. "Same circus, different clowns," Cooper muttered, adjusting his vest. They were assigned to the South Compound, a section known among guards as the Forgotten Wing. It was where troublemakers, snitches, and inmates under investigation were kept. The lights flicked, cared often, and the air felt heavy. Ramirez had once joked that the building itself didn't want to be there. But lately, strange things had been happening. Doors that were locked one moment would be found open the next. Logbooks were missing pages, and one inmate, a quiet man named Jerome Tate, kept saying, "The walls whisper at night." Most officers ignored him, but Ramirez didn't. He had seen too much in Rikers to laugh off anything. That day, during inspection rounds, he noticed something odd, a black stain running down the concrete near cell 27. He called for maintenance, but before anyone could check, the lights went out across the entire tier. The emergency alarm didn't sound. No power, no cameras. Cooper radioed, "Control, this is South Tier B. We just lost power. What's going on up there?" No answer, just static. Daniels reached for his flashlight, but the beam barely cut through the darkness. "Man, I don't like this," he said. Then came the voice. Faint, from the end of the hallway. "Help! Somebody help me!" It was a guard's voice. Ramirez froze. No officers were scheduled beyond cell 30 that night. He signaled to the others. They moved cautiously down the hall, flashlights trembling. The voice grew louder, but broken, like it was coming through a wall. "Please, don't leave me here." When they reached the end, the light landed on a cell door. The tag read 27. The same cell with the black stain. Ramirez stepped forward and peered inside. His breath caught in his throat. There, slumped against the wall, was Officer Miles, his partner from the previous week. His uniform was torn, and his wrists were bound tightly behind his back. His badge lay in the puddle at his feet. "Miles," Ramirez whispered. No answer. The lights flickered back on, just for a second, and in that flash, Ramirez saw something on the cell wall. Words scratched into the paint. "They re-watching us." Then the lights died again. Daniels screamed, "Ramirez, get back!" But before they could move, the heavy cell door slammed shut with a metallic clang that echoed through the hall. The lock clicked. All 3 men were trapped inside the tier. And from somewhere beyond the cells, they heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, coming closer. Ramirez's heart pounded as the noise grew louder. Cooper shouted for backup into his radio, but all they got was static, and a faint, distorted whisper that sent chills down their spines. It sounded like someone repeating the same words over and over. "Don't tell. Don't tell. Don't tell." The voice was close now, right outside the bars. And then, something moved in the dark. Ramirez's flashlight shook in his hand as he tried to find the source of the whisper. The beam flashed across the corridor, empty cells, peeling paint, dripping pipes. But the voice was still there, soft and raspy, like it was right behind them. "Don't tell!" Cooper spun around and yelled, "Who's there?" His voice bounced down the tier and came back like a ghostly echo. Then for a second, everything went silent. Ramirez pressed his radio again. "Control, this is Officer Ramirez, South Compound. We're trapped inside Tier B. We've got a man down." No response. Suddenly, from the other end of the hall, one of the steel doors creaked open by itself. It moved slow, grinding against the concrete. A cold wind rushed through, though there were no windows, no vents. Daniels whispered, "This ain't right, man. Cells don't open without the panel." They edged closer. Ramirez's beam caught something shiny on the floor near the open door. He crouched and picked it up. It was another badge. Miles's badge. But the number had been scratched off completely. That's when the lights snapped back on, flooding the hall with harsh, flickering white. The sound of the intercom crackled to life. "Control to South. Compound, status report." Cooper nearly cried out in relief. "We're here! We found Officer Miles. He's hurt. Send medical and backup now!" But the voice on the intercom wasn't Control. It was Miles. "Backup. Won't come." The line cut again. Ramirez's stomach dropped. That was him," he said, staring towards cell 27. But when they looked back inside, the cell was empty. The puddle, the badge, the body, all gone. Only the words remained scratched on the wall. "They're watching us." Daniels backed away, shaking his head. No, this ain't happening. I'm done. I'm done." He bolted toward the tier gate, trying to pry it open, but the lock wouldn't budge. He hit it over and over until his hand bled. Then the loudspeaker buzzed again. This time, a man's voice filled the whole compound, steady, commanding, and familiar. "Officers, return to your post. There is no emergency." It was Captain Harris, the shift commander. Relief flooded Ramirez's chest. "Cap, we're locked in. Something's wrong with the system." Harris's tone didn't change. "There is no emergency. You were never on Tier B." The words hung heavy in the air. Ramirez froze. "What?" The intercom popped again, then went dead. For a long moment, no one moved. Then a loud clank echoed through the hallway as the tier gate slowly opened by itself. The officers hesitated. Cooper muttered, "We're getting out of here. Now." They stepped into the corridor, running toward the exit, but when they reached the main security checkpoint, the lights flickered again, and everything around them was wrong. The hallway walls looked newer, the paint brighter, the floor spotless. The place didn't look like the South Compound anymore. They found themselves standing in front of the same door they had entered from hours earlier, but the sign above it didn't say Tier B. It said, "Restricted, authorized personnel only." Ramirez pushed the door open. Inside was a small observation room filled with screens showing live camera feeds from across the prison. One of the screens showed Tier B. Except in that footage, the three of them were still inside, standing in front of cell 27, flashlights raised. Daniels stepped back in horror. "That's us!" Then the screen flickered, and Miles appeared on it, standing behind their other selves. Ramirez whispered, "No, that's impossible." The lights in the observation room went out, and when they came back on, Cooper was gone. Ramirez and Daniels searched every inch of the room, shouting Cooper's name, but he'd vanished without a sound. The only trace left was his radio, lying on the floor with the mic still on. From it came that same whisper. "Don't tell." Ramirez grabbed Daniels by the arm. "We're leaving. Now." They sprinted down the corridor, not stopping until they burst through the main control room doors. Inside, a group of officers turned toward them. Different faces. Some Ramirez didn't recognize. The room was quiet. Too quiet. A man wearing a captain's badge stepped forward. "Officers," he said calmly, "where have you been?" Ramirez panted. "We were in the south compound. Something happened down there. Miles is—" But before he could finish, the captain frowned. "South compound? That wing's been closed for years." Ramirez froze. "That's not possible. We were just there." The captain exchanged a look with another officer. "Son, the south compound was shut down after the incident in 2018. 3 officers disappeared during a power failure. One of them was named Cooper." Daniels went pale, his mouth opening, but no sound coming out. Ramirez felt the room spin around him. He looked at the monitors behind the captain. One of them showed a camera feed from Tier B. In the grainy image, he saw 3 figures walking down the hall with flashlights: himself, Daniels, Cooper, still trapped, still calling for help. The screen glitched, and then went dark. Weeks later, that video, the one from the start, leaked online. It showed Ramirez, Daniels, and Cooper sitting in the briefing room, telling their story to an unseen interviewer. Only one problem. By the time the video appeared, all 3 officers had already been declared missing, and no one ever opened the south compound again. The end.